We have created an environment where people feel safe. We have created a culture where people feel safe to be vulnerable. We've created a culture where people know it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. And that it's all about growing and being self-aware enough to understand what those areas of weakness are in our life, what those struggles are in our life, but then be active in our pursuit to overcome them and to grow and strengthen those weaknesses. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sales Wolves podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tyler Harris, and I am a sales wolf. Oh, man. Well, it's episode 117 of the Sales Wolves podcast. And today I want to talk to you real briefly about creating company culture. Culture is one of the, I think, most unique things about our organization. And I think the best place to start is in the title, creating company culture. Company culture has to be created. It must be creative. It just doesn't develop on its own. Let me take that back. A good company culture or an intentional company culture has to be created. Or possibly a culture that you don't want created is what will develop over time on its own. And so you have to be cognizant of it. You have to be intentional about it, and you have to be active in the pursuit of it. And I think it's something that our insurance agency is, we've got agents that live all over the country. We've got staff here at our headquarters in Greenville, South Carolina. But the second anyone enters our organization, either in that headquarters staff or as an agent that lives in some part of the country, what they instantly feel, what they instantly recognize is the culture that has been created. And I'm at, a feeling of an all-time high of our culture as we just came out of our biggest training event of the year last week. We call it Top Gun, where we bring our top 25 agents from around the country in. The top 5 get to bring their spouses. We bring in our partners with the insurance carrier that we are partnered with the nonprofit that we're partnered with. We bring in speakers, incredible speakers. We have 7 or 8 of our agents speak. And, from Thursday night to Sunday late afternoon, we grow together. And we don't talk about life insurance. We don't talk about insurance at all. We don't talk about production. We talk about growing and becoming the best versions of ourselves. And the speeches are all incredibly impactful. But one thing I noticed, especially this year, is that it's incredibly emotional. Very emotional. I think everyone that was there would tell you that it was one of the more emotional weekends they've probably ever experienced. And I think that is because we have created an environment where people feel safe. We have created a culture where people feel safe to be vulnerable. We've created a culture where people know it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. And that it's all about growing and being self-aware enough to understand what those areas of weakness are in our life, what those struggles are in our life, but then be active in our pursuit to overcome them and to grow and strengthen those weaknesses. And the only way you can do that, and this is really the big tip I want everybody to take away from this podcast episode today, the biggest way to be able to promote that type of environment, to be able to promote that type of culture within your organization is by first being vulnerable yourself. As a member of leadership within your organization, you have to first show that vulnerability yourself in order to make every single other person, everybody else around you feel like it's okay for them to be vulnerable themselves. And that's what has been done. Myself, my business partners, we're emotional people, and we talk about the stuff that's not easy to talk about. We talk about the pain, the struggles that we've had in our life. We've talked about the things that we currently struggle with and are working through. And by doing so, we give other people, and those other people being the members of our organization, the audacity to open up and talk about their stuff. One thing I realized this past weekend is that we've all got stuff, and we're all going through stuff right now. We've all got stuff in the past that we've never worked through, and that life in and of itself is just one giant process of overcoming and persevering and being able to learn from those processes, and then being able to empower others by showing what we learned through those processes. And by doing that from the top down, by having the leadership be vulnerable enough to expose not just the things that happened years and years ago, because it's very easy as a leader to say, hey, this is who I was decades ago. Here's what I overcame, and here's who I am now. And look at me, I'm big and bad, and I'm this all powerful. But it's another to be able to talk about the struggles we go through in present tense, the struggles that we're going through, and the things that we're learning in the process of overcoming those right now. That is a whole nother level of leadership. And it gives everybody, again, the permission to talk about their stuff. A part of the weekend that's probably the most impactful for me is we do one-on-one sessions with each of our coordinators, each of our agents. The very last day on Sunday afternoon, they come in one at a time for half an hour, and we talked about, hey, what speech this weekend made the biggest impact on your life, and why? Our theme of this year's Top Gun was breaking barriers. So we asked them, what barriers or blind spots did you become aware of this weekend? And how are you working through those, or have you worked through those, or what can we do to help you work through those? And then what are some of the barriers of our organization? What are some of those blind spots within our organization that we as leadership can start attacking, that we can start, solving those problems and those issues, and ultimately get better as a company, so that they can get better in their profession as an insurance agent, so that we can all become the best versions of ourselves, and the company can become the best version of itself. And these conversations are very real. They're very raw. Across the board, there were a lot of tears shed on their end and on our end of just walking through this with them. And I think that's probably the second most important key, is not only first being vulnerable yourself and talking about the things that you've gone through and are going through, and giving them the audacity to do the same, but then being willing to step into that space and into that mess with them and lock arms, and for them to know that you're going to be with them, and for them to know that you've got their back, and for them to know that that struggle that they have, that you may not have any frame of reference, that you're willing to help them and support them in any way to get through it. And I think every one of those agents that we sat down with this past weekend, they left that meeting with the understanding that we love them. We ultimately want what's best for them, and that we're going to be there for them throughout, the years to come. And there's power in that. There's power in knowing that the leadership of your organization truly care about them as individual people, and not just in the apps, the applications, the life insurance policies that they represent, which is ultimately the revenue that they represent, that we care about them as human beings, that we care about them as people. Through this entire weekend, there was no talk about production. There was no talk about where we're going as a company, as far as, the details of the actual processes and things that we need to improve upon, and efficiencies and tactics. There was none of that. It was all about, how do we figure out what those blind spots are in our life, like those things that we don't even realize, but that are, holding us back from reaching our full potential. We talked about, our subconscious and the stories that we're telling ourselves over and over and over. And are we aware of the stories that we might be telling ourselves? And have we done anything about it once we've become aware of them? And then we talked about, things like, setting goals in your personal life with your relationships, your mind and your body, and how you can break those down to small enough tasks so that you can accomplish the big goals that you have. And everything was ultimately about getting each individual person to become the best version of themselves so that we as a group of people can become the best versions of ourselves. And, raising the standard, elevating your identity. And the way we raise our standard as a company is by raising the standard of the teams within our company and the divisions within our company. And the way we do that is by raising the standards and elevating the identity of the people. Every single thing that we do is focused on the individual person that's involved in our agency and helping them become better. And if we can help them become better, then we all become better in the process. And I just don't know that exists in corporate America. I've certainly never seen it. The majority of the people that I've spoken to about it certainly have never seen it. And it's something that's hard to even describe in this podcast to you without seeing for yourself, without experiencing for yourself, without you sitting in the room with the woman that's just sobbing and talking about things that happened as a child. And we're able to hold her hand and walk through that process with her and tell her that, hey, that is not who you are. That's just something that was done to you, or that's something that you did, and you are much more. And this is how we see you. And this is how amazing that we know you are. And this is what we see you doing with your life. And this is how incredible you are. And that God's put these gifts inside of you and these talents inside of you. And that he's made you to be something extraordinary. And that settling for this ordinary life is just not for you. That we see more in you than you maybe even see in yourself. Until you do that, like you can't fathom what it's like. But I encourage every single person that's listening or watching this podcast to start looking at your organization, start looking at the teams that you're on, the groups that you're in, the organizations that you're a part of, the clubs that you're a part of, the churches, all the different things where you're involved in a group of people, and start figuring out how can I start to change the culture of this group, start change the culture of this company, start changing the culture of this organization by first me becoming vulnerable and talking about the stuff that really matters, talking about the stuff that most people just avoid, that can be uncomfortable to talk about. And then when other people do the same, which they will, when you actually do that, they will do the same, being able to lock arms with those people and show them that you truly care, that you truly love them as human beings and not just what they represent for your company, and to be able to start going down that path with them. It's the greatest investment that you'll ever make as a leader. It's the greatest journey that you could ever be on with a group of people. And I'm honored to be in a company and in an organization that treats it as such. And so that's it for me, guys. We're just kind of on a high from this past weekend. And I say a high, we've all kind of felt like just emotional shells of human beings having gone through it on our end. It's very, very taxing. It's very, very exhausting. And I challenge you, in those that are going to actually, pursue vulnerability and this style of leadership to create this culture in your organization. I challenge you in that it's going to be difficult. It's not easy. But you guys know we say it more than anybody, that everything significant, everything extraordinary is not going to be easy. And so it's worth it. At the end of the day, it's worth it. And so with that, guys, this is episode 117 of the Sales Wolves podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tyler Harris, and I am a sales wolf. Ow!